I used to get three labels: impatient, awkward, and nervous. Having those labels, it tended to affect me really negatively, and I used to, struggle to kind of come back from that.
That, mi gente, is Rob Gotlieb, a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD person who's about to tell us what it looks like to rethink those workplace labels. Welcome back to the Corporate Detox, the podcast where we talk about work, ambition, and life in and after corporate. Because, mi gente, we needed this. It's me, Erilsa, longtime marketing expert and your favorite corporate escape artist. Rob is a growth marketing leader and consultant who's worked across subscription, entertainment, digital businesses, including roles at brands that you've just maybe heard of: Harry Potter, Napster. But in this episode, we're not really talking about growth in the traditional sense. We're talking about the quieter, internal kind, the labels we pick up along the way, what masking looks like behind the scenes, what changes when you stop treating them as fixed truths, and how ADHD and autism can completely reframe a career once they enter the picture. And that starts right here, with how those labels show up in the everyday workplace. Awkward, impatient, nervous. Labels in the everyday workplace.
It's a topic that I'm also really interested in adulthood.
How did it feel?
I am all about, I guess, the nature of me as a person and as a professional. I get frustrated with things like slow decision making, or if priorities aren't clear, or if I'm doing a project that it hasn't got an obvious impact or outcome. Things like sitting in meetings that don't lead to action, they're just like my worst nightmare.
What was the shorthand people were using?
I want to be efficient with my time. I want to get to the result. So that's like the impatient elements. And I guess awkward is, I've got less instinct for things such as navigating office politics. I prefer really direct communication. I want to say what I think versus kind of what's expected. That's where that kind of the awkwardness kind of comes from. That's the internal conversation I have versus what might or might not be perceived externally. And I guess the nervous energy is I'm aware of risks or performance or also kind of expectations. What I'll do to mitigate and prepare for that is I'll over prepare, or I'll think about all the consequences, or I'll often think about all the possible outcomes in my mind and then explore every one, which is exhausting. So there's a lot going on that just people don't see.
At that point, did you not know how to combat it, and you were just kind of dealing with the noise of the workplace?
Yeah, I would say that I wasn't disciplined enough at that point. At that point, I was an absolute people pleaser. I wanted to please everyone, but I would say yes to many more things than I all the time. And I'm still guilty of this to some degree. It's still something I'm working on. I'm not a polished version. There are times in my past that I would get overloaded. I'm working until silly o'clock, midnight, past midnight. If a client wants me to be on a call at 10 p.m., I'm just not going to be the best version of myself.
I just wonder, is it toxic for somebody, having that?
I think there's this concept of masking where people who are neurodiverse, if there's a situation which they find uncomfortable or tough to deal with, they will mask. They will just accept the environment that they're in, and they'll just get on with it.
For you, what did masking look like? Like, what happens when you have a Slack message or a tiny human?
Yeah. So I've got two tiny humans in my life, a 6- and 9-year-old. That is life. I actually relish those types of interruptions. Those for me are precious and priceless. And one of the reasons why I actually became a consultant is because I wanted to dedicate more time to help raise my boys. So for me, that is just wonderful. I even take the effort of introducing them as my guest attendees to meetings if I'm on a client call. Everyone loves it. Who's not going to love to be interrupted by a 6-year-old child? So I generally don't get upset about stuff like that because we can only control so many things. Slack messages it's so hard to resist.
I know.
Like the temptation of like, bing. But that I still kind of struggle with. My brain's tends to be easily distracted.
Yeah, what does that look like, easily distracted? Because for me, I'm so just tunnel vision that literally there could be a bus passing by me honking, and I'm the New Yorker who can block it out. So what does that look like?
Yeah, it varies. So for me, when I am zoned and tuned into a project, time will just evaporate. I won't even be aware, or someone will say something to me and I'll acknowledge that they'll say to it. Then I'll just immediately forget. It just goes from one ear to the other. And my wife, I'm so guilty of, doing that with my wife, as she'll know and justify. But yeah. And like now, I'm just struggling to answer the rest of your question because stuff just goes. It's so hard.
Honestly, they don't make sense to me. You just described an environment where you're zoned in, you have special interests, you're like really locked in, you have 3 priority goals that you like focus on, and then you say you're distracted? To me, like, how do those things...
The way I think about it, the way it makes sense to me, kind of before I got that, I was like, okay, I'm convinced that I am autistic. I'm not convinced about the ADHD. So when I got that, I was like, okay, I'm slightly unexpected, but actually kind of makes sense. The way I think about it, I am all about delivering results.
Yes.
And then the other part is I want to be constantly challenging myself. So for me, I think of it as a healthy way forward. But other people might think, oh my God, are you crazy? Just like, chill out. Just calm down. Stop trying to do all these ridiculous ultra marathons or trying to learn how to do this skill. But I'm just like, I can't help it. And it makes me immensely happy to be constantly doing these things. But it's also slightly exhausting. I sleep well at night.
But how do those come together?
I mean, the reality is that they don't come together. They're kind of almost sparring partners. ADHD is saying, I want to be doing things, I want to be out, I want to be moving forwards. And then the autism is like saying, I need space, I need to focus, I need time alone. So it's like, it is a constant battle. They call it ODHD, AUDHD is the combined phrase, the combined type. It's just like, why have one when you can have 2? Or 2 for 1? So yeah, it was interesting.
By this point, you might be thinking there are a lot of labels here. ADHD, autism, AUDHD, DSM, and depending on who you speak to, even different ways of describing the same experience. And that's kind of the point, because this isn't one neat category with one definition. It's a spectrum. And because I'm a huge nerd, if you do some very back of the envelope math just to get a sense of scale, imagine even 10 common traits, each showing up in 3 different intensities across just those 2 conditions we talked about. You very quickly get to something on the order of roughly 3.5 billion possible profiles. And that's before you even acknowledge how simplified that model is compared to real life, which is why the simplest question becomes the hardest one. What does any of this actually mean? Now that I'm thinking about it, I should have started off with this.
So a year ago, I got a diagnosis is such a medical term for it, but I learned that I was autistic and have ADHD. I think it's very natural for us as people to put labels on things. And for me, it was like the start of a journey. It was almost looking at things retrospectively, but just looking forward and using that label as a way to kind of, I guess, navigate the workplace. I wanted to kind of start that journey because I think knowledge is power, and I want to know myself. I'm always about pushing myself, be it in the workplace or doing an ultra marathon. I'm all about the journey. I've learned a lot in this past year as a late diagnosed autistic ADHD person. It's taught me about kind of structure, environment.
It was just 1 year ago that you were relabeled, found a new purpose. When I think that, I hate to age you, but I have to ask, how old are you now?
I'm 49.
The reason why I wanted to point it out is that we can live 48 years of our lives and still be finding something new about ourselves.
We're constantly discovering new things and learning.
Really beautiful. So you said a year ago you got this, which I also think is very clinical, diagnosis.
Yeah.
What sparked you to try and get it?
It's a great question. Our 9-year-old boy, Ari, he got his diagnosis, and I remember very specifically myself and my wife were on a call with the psychiatrist as part of his evaluation, and the psychiatrist was going through all the behaviours that Ari was experiencing and asking us questions, and it was so interesting and curious. As he was talking about these types of behaviours, Lauren and I were looking at each other and we were like, hold on, is he talking about Ari or is he talking about me? And actually that kind of like light bulb almost kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna look into this myself. And that's really what kind of kickstarted the process. It took a year to actually go through all the assessments for myself. Throughout that whole time, that's when I started to educate myself about what autism was, what ADHD was. And I started to follow some amazing people, some amazing audiobooks, and it was enriching to the point where, as I was educating myself, I was like, oh my God, I really hope I get this label, because that will explain so much about, retrospectively kind of like decisions that I've made, or even actually, experiences I've had in the workplace. And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh my God, this explains so much.
One thing you said that was crazy is it took a year for you to get that diagnosis. I had no idea about this. Like, can you explain to me that process a little bit?
Yeah, so in the UK, we've got a number of options. You can either go through the NHS, which is paid for by us taxpayers, and there's a real backlog because so many people have started to kind of recognize that they might have autistic and ADHD traits and want to have assessed. And then that's versus the paid routes where you can spend a few £1,000s to get a much quicker assessment. And I chose to kind of go the NHS route. And actually though, that 12 months, I think that was relatively quick compared to kind of in certain places. It's very much a postcode lottery where, depending on where you live, you could wait for 2 to 3 years. And that's actually a real shame that people are having to wait all that time to get that label or not. And all that while you're obviously experiencing that anxiety.
Yeah, crazy. It sounds also the focus allows you to make connections that others wouldn't. Would you agree? Or
Yeah, I think my mum would probably say that I always did things the tough way. Possibly what she was referring to as a lack of kind of conforming, a lack of I guess being just like everyone else. I've always felt like I'm kind of slightly different. I think about things in a different way. But I really do see it as a benefit.
that's exactly where I was trying to go.
The thing that is possibly unique to ADHD and autism is this concept of special interests. And I didn't even know that was a thing.
What is it? What is this thing?
You tend to have maybe 3 or 4, a handful of things that you are an expert in, that you care about so deeply and passionately that you can't help but immerse yourself in.
Like, what did that look like?
Beyond marketing, for me, I am a gamer. I love gardening. It's running. Some typical runner, they might go out, but I won't do running like someone might train for half marathon and a marathon, maybe even more than one marathon. No. I go to the end degree. I have done 3-4 marathons, but then I'm also currently training for my 3rd ultra marathon. Yeah, I don't do things by halves. For me though, that is a superpower. It's just like a motor that doesn't stop in my head. I always like doing something or learning something. Right now I'm building an app, and it's just like, oh my God, when are these things gonna stop?
It's like you want to do a lot of things, and you want to do a lot of things well.
The thing that I'm trying to teach myself is that I need to be kinder to myself. Do I need to train for this 100-mile ultramarathon? I think I've proven beyond all reasonable doubt that I can run. I'm a runner, but then something is pushing me just to challenge myself to just see how far I can take this thing. That's just the concept of what a special interest could look like.
It's interesting because not having knowledge of how the autistic brain or ADHD brain works, so bear with me, these special interests. Like, is it a tool?
I obviously can only speak to my own experience. And,
Yes.
and I guess that's just another point, right? Everyone knows this concept of neurodiversity as a spectrum, and I truly believe that. For me, these special interests are linked to my neurodiverse personality, I guess. The autism was there before the special interests began, and that's the way I'm interpreting how I approach things like running.
I think what's beautiful that you said is the reframing. Do you recall like a moment when it hit you? I'm in an environment that fits me and my personality.
Yeah, it was actually on the first big project that I worked for an executive coaching firm. I was working with a colleague, and we were working on this big audit of this multi-million-dollar operation. For me, having the space to take a step back and think really strategically to see, okay, this is where that path is, and being able to take breaks and go back to it and take breaks, it meant that I could kind of carve out my day where I could dedicate maybe 6 hours to this consultancy project, but then I could go for a run in my lunchtime. Like, how amazing is that? Guilt-free. This is amazing. This is just like the best. This is the best. This is the way forward. Why haven't I done this before? So yeah, being able to do good work, but then do things that nourish my soul and that I knew were good for my mental health and wealth, and then having that ability to come back to it with that fresh perspective later that day. I was like, this is amazing. I love this. And then that project was so successful.
It just created this environment where you were primed to unlock the superpower of it.
I was like, this is what I was meant to be doing all this time. This is what I've been building up to.
If you're listening to this and thinking, okay, but where does this actually start to click in real life? I mean, me too. For some people, it shows up in moments like this. For others, it's in conversation happening in rooms like the Lead Summit later this month in New York. A moment to figure out what's actually working, what's not, what's changing. And for retailers and brands, I've partnered with the Lead to get you in for free. Bonus is you get to hang out with me, which is, I think, really exciting. More details in the show notes. But back to Rob. His moment, it wasn't just beautiful. It explained so much. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was. It was beautiful. Everything starts to make sense, and it's like it's a double-edged sword. It's like you don't like having this label, but then when you start to really embrace it, it explains so much.
The power of having it explained. I heard the same thing from my friend. Once he was labeled as OCD, he felt like he had tools now.
And I think the thing that really struck me was, on my part, a lack of awareness about what autism was, what it meant.
So what does that look like?
When Ari got his diagnosis, we talked to him about it, so he knew what journey we were all on and what he was on and supporting him. We got him this amazing book, I remember, and the beautiful thing about this book in particular was that it started to highlight celebrate all the people that were autistic and had ADHD. He really saw it as a superpower. He would have been disappointed had he not been assessed as ADHD and autism.
That's
So
awesome.
things like Elon Musk, he was like, oh my god, I'm just like Elon Musk. I learned a lot through him. I'm not saying I'm like Elon Musk, but we're in a place now where we're celebrating for people who are being labelled as autistic and they have ADHD, and isn't that a wonderful thing? That
It's
wouldn't happen years ago,
wonderful.
right?
The world of Elon, I mean, the world of Elon Musk, the things that you can create, that's really, really beautiful. I want to end on the powerful note of relabeling. You talked about three labels: awkward, impatient, nervous. Relabel those for me. What would those become now in a performance review or in a normal work setting?
Instead of impatience, it's all about delivering results as smartly as possible. About being awkward, instead of that, it's cutting through the noise and delivering something that's of meaning. In terms of nervous, it's about having the energy to want to do the right thing. For me, those are the way that I would choose to reframe those labels.
I love it. I want to be in a world where the power of being different is unlocked. Don't remove the essence of what makes this person special.
I feel like, listen, we've only got one life. This is not a read-through. We get one shot, and I guess the thing that's the constant engine in me just wants to do as much as I can in the time that I'm here.
How does it work?
One of the things that I'll never forget, I was at mile 82 of my 100-kilometer ultramarathon I did last year, and my wife and son Ari came to surprise me, and I approached them and I said, Ari, this just goes to show, if you put your mind to something, you can always achieve it. And that's the lesson, and that's the legacy I want to be leaving behind. I want my sons to see me as an example for them, that we can do anything that we want if we put our minds to it. And this is not unique to me as a person who is autistic and ADHD. I want to encourage everyone to truly believe that we are more capable than we realize, and actually the mind gives up before the physical, before the body does.
Yeah, I think the idea of the mind giving up before the body does is a real one. It makes you realize how often it's not actual limits we're running into, but the labels we've already have accepted about ourselves in those moments. So maybe the question isn't how capable we are, but what we'd be able to do if we stopped describing ourselves that way.